Welcome to 1950s New York. In this video, we're not just telling you about the past, we're taking you there. Get ready to be transported through time to the golden era of post-war America, when the Big Apple was booming, bustling, and brimming with style. We'll walk the same streets, pass by the same neon lights, and visit 15 of the most iconic spots in the city as they looked over 70 years ago from Times Square to Coney Island, from Fifth Avenue's elegance to Harlem's soul. So let's take a stroll through the New York your grandparents knew and maybe never forgot. And if you are a sports fan, you will like the last one on the list. In the 1950s, Times Square was the electric heart of New York, chaotic, glamorous, and alive day and night. Neon signs buzzed over crowds of commuters, sailors on leave, tourists, and theatergoers lining up beneath glittering marquees. Street vendors shouted over honking cars, while newsboys weaved through the crowd selling papers with Cold War headlines. Theaters like the Paramount and Lowe's were temples of entertainment, playing the latest Hollywood hits to packed houses. It was a time when Times Square had grit, but also magic. It wasn't yet the polished tourist haven it would become, but it was iconic, a mirror of America's ambition and appetite for spectacle. The buzz never stopped, and for many, this was the real New York. Raw, vibrant, and unforgettable. Fifth Avenue in the 1950s was elegance in motion. Lined with grand department stores like Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord & Taylor, and Bonwit Teller, the avenue was a showcase of luxury and post-war prosperity. Pedestrians in fine coats and gloves strolled past extravagant window displays, while yellow cabs crawled through the traffic beside them. It was the city's runway, where high fashion met classic New York charm. This wasn't just a shopping street, it was a symbol of status, style, and the American dream. From the Plaza Hotel to St. Patrick's Cathedral, every block had a story, and every storefront glowed with mid-century glamour. Fifth Avenue wasn't just part of the city, it was its polished, beating heart. In the 50s, Grand Central Terminal felt like a living organism. Beneath its famous Constellation ceiling, travelers swarmed through marble halls, soldiers returning home, businessmen rushing to meetings, families off to the suburbs. Shoeshine boys worked their corners. The aroma of hot coffee and tobacco filled the air, and the loudspeaker announcements echoed like a metronome guiding city life. More than a transit hub, Grand Central was where New York moved fast, bold, and full of purpose. It was both elegant and functional, a cathedral of motion where the city's soul passed through every hour. For many, arriving here meant they had finally made it to the heart of America's greatest city. In the 1950s, Central Park was a nostalgic slice of Americana. Families strolled along tree-lined paths, couples rode gently across the lake, and children in wool coats and saddle shoes raced through playgrounds. On weekends, picnics dotted the lawns. Street musicians played near Bethesda Terrace, and horse-drawn carriages moved steadily past the reservoir. It was a calm, scenic refuge from the city's chaos, a place where time seemed to slow. Despite the city's booming pace, Central Park remained a haven of tradition. Nannies pushed strollers, jazz drifted from portable radios, and old men played chess near the benches. It wasn't just a park, it was where New Yorkers recharged, connected, and created memories that spanned generations. Crossing the Brooklyn Bridge in the 1950s was a cinematic experience. Classic Chevys and Studebakers rumbled over the steel and stone span, while trolleys and early buses offered commuters a daily view of the city's rising skyline. The bridge's Gothic arches framed the East River and the growing towers of Manhattan like a living postcard. Pedestrians still walked the upper path, taking in the crisp air and panoramic views, often stopping to admire the balance between old-world engineering and modern ambition. It was more than a crossing, it was a journey between boroughs, and for many, the daily reminder that New York was a city built to endure. In the 1950s, no structure captured the imagination like the Empire State Building. Still holding the title of tallest building in the world, it was a symbol of American might and innovation. From its gleaming spire, the city stretched endlessly below rivers, rooftops, and the ever-growing skyline in every direction. Tourists waited in long lines for the observation deck, while office workers buzzed up and down in streamlined elevators. Lit up at night and standing tall by day, The Empire State wasn't just a building, it was proof that New York could touch the clouds and still keep climbing. Radio City Music Hall was pure spectacle in the 1950s. Its golden marquee lit up the block, promising elegance and escape inside. The Rockettes were the stars, their high-kicking precision a marvel to behold. Crowds lined up in coats and hats, eager for movies, stage shows, and the grand Art Deco interior that seemed to whisper old Hollywood glamour. It was more than a theater, it was a ritual. Whether for the famous Christmas spectacular or a world premiere, stepping into Radio City felt like entering a dream. In a decade craving fantasy and pride, it delivered both in dazzling, unforgettable style. In the 1950s, Coney Island was a summer paradise, pulsing with life. Roller coasters like the Cyclone rattled above the cheers of thrill seekers, while the Wonder Wheel spun slowly over rows of striped beach umbrellas. The boardwalk was alive with the smell of hot dogs from Nathan's cotton candy and salty ocean air. Families in swimsuits and sunglasses crowded the sands, while kids darted between arcade games and souvenir stands. It was loud, colorful, and electric, a place where city stress melted into laughter, and for many New Yorkers, it was the very definition of freedom and fun. 125th Street in Harlem during the 1950s was a cultural epicenter like no other. Jazz and soul music poured from clubs and cafes, where legends like Billie Holiday and Thelonious Monk played to packed crowds. The sidewalks buzzed with barbershops, diners, beauty parlors, and elegant black-owned department stores like Blumstein's. This wasn't just a street, it was the beating heart of Black New York. Street corners doubled as social spaces, and locals walked with pride in their Sunday best. Harlem's vibrant pulse turned 125th into a runway of resilience, talent, and unmistakable style. A trip to the Bronx Zoo in the 1950s was a special treat for families. Children in wool coats and leather shoes gazed in awe at elephants, lions, and monkeys, many of whom lived in exhibits built decades earlier but still sparked wonder. Parents snapped black and white photos beside enclosures and guided their kids through the winding paths. The zoo had a classic, almost storybook feel. There were no flashy shows, just simple marvels of nature and quiet picnic spots under the trees. It was an escape into a world of discovery, where a walk through the zoo felt like traveling the globe without ever leaving the Bronx. In the 1950s, the Bowery was raw, loud, and deeply human. It was a stretch of Manhattan filled with flopphouses, dive bars, pawn shops, and characters of every kind. This gritty neighborhood was where war veterans, laborers, and struggling artists collided on stoops and curbs, forging a strange sense of community. Though known for its rough edges and reputation, the Bowery also held a historic soul. It was one of the city's oldest thoroughfares, where echoes of vaudeville theaters and immigrant stories lingered behind weathered storefronts. In its chaos, the Bowery reminded New York that not all stories are polished, but all are real. In the 1950s, Wall Street embodied post-war prosperity. Men in crisp suits and fedoras hurried across cobblestone streets, briefcases in hand, gathering outside the New York Stock Exchange like it was a sacred temple of capitalism. The atmosphere buzzed with the energy of booming industries and growing wealth. Taxis weaved between delivery trucks, and newspapers were sold on every corner, echoing the financial heartbeat of the nation. It was a symbol of power and progress, where every tick of the ticker tape felt like a drumbeat of America's rise on the world stage. Greenwich Village in the 1950s was a world apart from Midtown's glitz. Its narrow streets were filled with poets, painters, and dreamers sipping espresso in smoky cafes. Beatniks with berets recited free verse under dim lights, while folk guitarists strummed their hearts out in tucked-away basement clubs. This was the early spark of New York's counterculture, a creative rebellion that would later explode. The village was intimate, chaotic, and alive with ideas. It wasn't polished, but for those seeking something real, it was magnetic. The Waldorf Astoria was the pinnacle of elegance. Its grand marble lobby welcomed celebrities, diplomats, and socialites, while doormen in impeccable uniforms tipped their hats to arriving Cadillacs. Inside, chandeliers glittered above ballrooms where orchestras played and champagne flowed. A symbol of old New York sophistication, the hotel was a stage where high society played out its rituals. If you stayed at the Waldorf, you weren't just visiting New York, you were part of its glamour. Known as the house that Ruth built, Yankee Stadium in the 50s was hallowed ground. Fans in suits and ties, not jerseys, filled the stands, cheering for legends like Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra. Vendors walked the aisles yelling, "Peanuts! Cracker Jack!" as the game played on under the sun. It wasn't just baseball, it was theater, ritual, and identity. The Bronx roared with pride every time the Yankees stepped onto the field. For many, a day at the stadium wasn't just about sport, it was about belonging to a dynasty. New York in the 1950s had a certain magic, an effortless elegance that flowed through its streets, theaters, and neighborhoods. It was a time when people dressed with pride, when every corner cafe or newsstand felt like a scene from a classic film. The city moved with confidence, charm, and a kind of grace we rarely see today. But looking at it now, we can't help but ask, have we lost that magic? Has modern chaos swallowed the soul of that timeless city? Or does it still live on, hidden beneath the noise, waiting to be remembered? If you enjoyed this trip back in time, we'd love your support. Give the video a like and drop a comment. It really helps the channel grow and keeps this kind of content alive. And who knows? Maybe together, we'll rediscover the New York that once was.